Okay, so context. This is a semi-final. Yeah. And it's Bears 1 Week 2, which everyone loves. This is why Bears 1 Week 2 is so notorious now, because technically Bears 1-1, but we kind of cheated our way to victory.
Whoa, that's
Which,
spoilers. Spoilers,
well,
Dan.
sorry, you'll see. So yeah, just start it playing and then pause it to mention a few things when it happens.
Best 2 game. First possession. Hugh chats shit as he runs up the line.
Baby Daniel.
So can anyone tell me, firstly, what is happening? What is Bears 1 doing to try to slow Bears 2 down now? Just start it off nice and simple. I think Felix is reminiscing about the good old days of players. It's kind of gone organically into a flood. So you saw. Is it this button to go back? Oh, that's the start. As you saw when who was it? Fiddler? Someone got the up line here. Yeah, Fiddler. Jonah was already just standing in the corner. So normally nowadays when we do flood, we do what's called 4-1, where you have 4 people on the ball and 1 person out chasing around the disc, forcing them into it. But back then, it was a. Let's just see if I can get it less framing. Oh, less blurry. No, I can't. It was a 3-2. So the point was you only had 3 people in, marking whoever's in, and then the partner, who's just off screen here, would be ready to stop jump-ins. I didn't like this approach, if you can tell. I'm not sure if it shows it later, but why I don't like it. But yeah, let's just keep watching and see how effective it is. So yeah, with. Oh, by the way, is the volume on the thing like too loud enough? Can you hear it?
It's quite quiet. I can still hear it, but it's not super loud. No. I mean, you could probably turn it up if you wanted to.
Well, that's how far I can turn it up. Yeah, having 3 on the line just means there's more holes that you have to deal with.
Yeah, especially with these big end
Interesting.
zones.
Bears 2 backing themselves in the man.
Anybody know what this tactic is?
Up. Up.
Oh, it's a score
Okay,
from Dan.
Is it him? I'll throw him. Throw him.
I think pretty much the main tactic played in indoors is, so all of this stuff is 2-1-2.
Yeah. Bears 2 do a really good job of running it through Fiddler, Zach, and Hugh. 2-1-2 until the end zone, where they, try and score. The reason Bears 2 do so well in this game, in my opinion, is just because they're the team dictating play. They're the one dictating how fast the game is during every point. Like, as you can see, if I go back to the start of the point, you can see Willem like trying to keep up Farry. They start all guns blazing at the start, and Bears 1 on defense don't get a chance to rest. However, I mean, when they get near the end zone, they just slow it down, calm it down, and then wait for their shot. And this what we call change of pace throughout the game is just like super important when you play indoors.
Yeah, I've definitely been on the bad receiving end of people changing the pace of the game.
Oh, this is something to point out. That is a bad example of Frig there. So there's this huge gap. Sam is staring at his defender who's just off screen, and Frig is staring more at Hugh with the disc than the defender. Because indoors it's such like the flight time is right. Oh, um, because indoors is such small margins and like the disc flight time is so small, you have to be constantly looking at a defender and a disc. If you stare at one for too long, you're just gonna get beat essentially. So in this case, Frigg stared at the disc for too long, and Stevie took the advantage, moves out, and got it. If he had stared at Stevie for too long, Stevie could have just stood still, Hugh thrown it at Stevie, and then caught it last second.
Do you want to just go through the people for? So Sam is on the right side of the screen. On Bez
Can you see my mouse?
No, can't.
Oh,
Because you're sharing
okay.
the
I've been
video.
pointing with that. That makes sense.
Um,
Yes, sorry. Sam's on the right. Frigg. Oh, I don't know how to describe it. If you, Hugh's on disc. Frigg is currently being blocked by Hugh. You can see his arm there, and Stevie is the one being blocked by the disc.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna have to describe so much more now.
Yeah, Stevie's the person who scores.
Yeah. As you can see, both teams just play 2-on-2. Although, best two have tried a zone here.
Dan scores again. Oh, it's another zone.
There's 2.
Yeah, this is the old FSU zone. Oh, sad.
Oh. Oh. 3-2 to Bez 2. Previous score.
So at this point, we've only actually had like 3 minutes of play time, but it's probably been going on for 4 minutes. It's within one, but Bears 2 scored the first point. There hasn't been a single turnover. It's all just been offenses scored. But the problem for Bears 1, or for a lot of players on it, they don't like this. They think they should just be demolishing the second team because, well, it's the first team v the second team. So people start getting in their heads a little bit. It's like, why aren't we winning? And the truth is, nothing wrong by Bears 1. Bears 2 have been playing incredibly. Like, they've been really safe. It's a very good team. It's a common practice to think when you're better than another team that you should just win from the start. It's not the case. Frisbee's not like that. Anyone can beat anyone, especially in indoors. So
yeah, especially
I think
as Bears 2 started off with the disc, and indoors it makes way more, like, there's a lot more weight towards who starts off with the disc. Sorry, who starts off on offense, because then they have a clear advantage from the start. You know, if you cap the time and whoever started off the disc can just win because they started off with it. Yeah, sorry, keep going.
yeah, and so in this point, some Bears 1 players start to crumble, unfortunately.
Goes along to Jovan. Goes over the top of Dilson. Oh, out the back.
It's just one of those things. Jovan, like, it's on. Jovan wants to score quickly, so rather than taking that extra second, which always is needed in indoors, just think about how you're throwing it. He just overthrew it slightly. That's all it takes indoors. One overthrow.
Yeah.
Jovan is the tall one who threw that disc. Yes, thanks, Iona.
Yeah, number 24, just on screen
Yeah.
now. And this is the first turnover of the game, right?
Yeah, this is the first turnover.
That's Willem.
Joined here today by Sheffield West. Tom Pope. Famous man.
Bears 1 is interestingly doing a zone on defense. It's always a weird call, but I guess the turnover Bears 2 took a while to set up, so it's not the worst.
What is something? Does anyone know something that mentally you can do to, if you've just been turned over and you're walking back to your line on defense? Is there anything mentally that you're? Well, it's physically as well, I suppose, but something you can do, which just makes it easier to I don't know, be positive about a game.
Grab juice. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, grab juice is a good one. But just keeping your heads up. If you, the just to start at that point, all of the Bears 1 players are like looking at the floor. I think is never talked about as much. But all sports is all mental basically, and I think definitely in this game there's a clear like crumbling of the first team as the game goes on, which is sad.
Joe, Frigg looking for that up the line. Find some middle space. Back to Willem. Up to Frigg.
You can see at this point, like, nothing looks hard. It's still indoors. There's always a free person. So it's just about taking the right option and not forcing. Like, you don't have to score in 10 seconds. Like, there's still a lot of time. You just need to make sure that final shot you take is 100%. So that's all the difference.
Bring it in close. Dan's got to try and get back around to put on that defense. Over the top.
And there was another failure of that. So this option, I mean, it is. Let me. How do you go back frame by frame, Hannah? Which button is it?
In what are you showing this in?
VLC. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's here. So Jovan, I mean, he's a giant. He's number 24. He's very tall, and the person on disc freak is also very experienced. So in indoors, putting it up to your tall man is very usual to score. If someone is better in the air than the other team, why wouldn't you take advantage of them? That was our whole tactic with Felix the year after. But the way Frigg throws it is the way you'd throw it if it was like, I don't know, if he was being marked by another tall person. He throws it to behind Jovan near the back of the end zone so that the defense can't make a play on it. Putting it that far makes it just slightly harder for Joe to catch, and he ends up not being able to. Whereas if it was coming directly down on Jovan, like, there's nothing. I can't tell who's the defender. I think it might have been like Dan Galvin, someone who's nearly a foot shorter than him, like, can do if it's just coming straight down. So this, like, I don't know, take the options that are easiest, in the sense that you don't need to overcomplicate things. Just put it to the person. You don't need to make it so that they are boxing out the defender if the defender doesn't have a play on it anyway. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it also could just be a throw, like a throwing error, right? It's not a throwing and receiving error on both ends. So a little bit of jitters, like Jovan gets a hand to it, probably should have definitely caught it. But just like jitters on both ends, which is definitely something that maybe in games like this, you just slowly swing it down the back and then wait for an option at the front of the end zone. And then if it's taking so long, then you maybe look over the top. But at this point, you know, it's only been on the sideline for not very long. He's got a very free dump. You would have thought maybe dumping it and just continued that instead of having 3 defenders in an area, which makes it even harder for Jovan, even if it's not particularly hard, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Over the top. Oh, big man can't quite bring it down this time. Potential second break for Bears.
Can anyone, linking back to a previous live stream, explain what Carver's doing here? Carver actually wore glasses back then, so if you can't recognise him, he's the furthest right on the screen and the lights. Well, yeah, he is poaching. poaching, I mean, in all general sense, it's good in certain times defense. This is arguably the best poach in indoors in my eyes. They're playing the twos are playing a 2-1-2, which means they want to get it, put it up to Hugh in the middle by putting it to break side where Hugh can get it and Frigg, his defender, can't get it. So Carver, by leaving their person who's deep in the end zone, is a threat because they're in the end zone, but they're not going to get it immediately. Can cover that break side. Well, he's actually on the open side, but the other side that the other defender is, and just make that throw really scary for the thrower, and they'll just look it off. In which case, as soon as they look it off, he can then go back and stay tight, and they can't do anything about it really. In the Alan Higgs, I think it's very powerful because throwing it the full length of the pitch accurately is really hard. But in other indoor smaller courts, smaller pitches, it's a little bit riskier because a knife to the end zone is quite easy, and if it's on, good throwers will throw it. Yeah. The other thing is there is another defender to the right of the screen, but they are just covering two people now.
Like like Felix is saying, wait a minute, go back a few seconds. Oh.
Here?
No, just a bit after that. Just before Harry goes up to the line. I think it's Harry, right?
Yes.
What is Willem doing? Wait a minute, in a little bit. Felix is asking. So Willem is number 66, 56, furthest
66.
left white person on the screen. If you just play it and pause it like a second or something. Yeah. So what is something that Willem does really wrong here? Can any point out? Apart from being behind his player, which isn't good, but there's also something that he doesn't do very well. I don't know if Felix has any views on this.
I think Felix was just lightly roasting him more than anything. But yeah, why is it bad? Yes, he was focusing on Hugh, which is an interesting person to focus on when Hugh is already being double marked.
Yeah, I only said he could have started in the way of his player instead. Yeah, so I think Williams wasn't totally on his player to start off with, and therefore wasn't kind of getting in the way of the person running up line. But also, after he starts running, Harry, his red player, Willem, only when he passes him does Willem start moving, which is reactive instead of proactive defense, which is not the way to get any turns.
Yeah. It's very common. I mean, we've talked about it loads in the past, but often when people are scared of being beaten up the line, they'll go stand off, but they'll just stand off and then wait for their offensive player to get near them before they start running. So defeats the whole purpose of standing that distance away. It's actually better if you can basically on them so that they can't start running that fast up that way. And yeah. It's a classic mistake. I think it's even more common indoors. But so scared of people getting the other line.
Yeah. Should we watch a more Frisbee?
Top man. Centres to Hugh. Over, nice snipe to Dan, just on the edge. Stevie trying to look for that gap. Oh, Harry finds it. 2 break points up now for Bez too.
Oh dear.
Oh dear, indeed.
It's just the first team looks so sad.
Over the top, looking for Jonah.
Oof.
Oh dear.
Minton nearly got that.
That was close. Oh, why didn't you throw it?
Yeah. Do loads of space throws.
Oh, Jovan right in the end.
At this point, 3 points down, I understand just trying to score quickly to get back into it.
Yes, oh, Carver with the D.
Huge plays.
Carver. Willem. Carver. Willem again.
So what I think Bears 1 is quite bad at here is they're just not cycling in and out of the end zone. It's the same 2 in, the same 3 out. And so with no movement, it doesn't move the defenders around enough, and so they're not making the gaps that Bears 2 do when against the flood.
Oh, bit of spice then.
Oh, and Willem didn't think about how to throw. That also happens quite a bit.
I mean, it should have. It was just a. It wasn't particularly hard at catching.
Oh, Hugh wins the
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the reaction from Figure being like, "What was that?" I mean, it was definitely two-handable, catchable. Oh dear.
Yeah, it's just a bit wobbly.
A little bit of a pushing going on there. Does it again?
Yeah. Jonah likes to get up close and personal with Zach.
In the way of the camera.
That's scuba play.
Oh, score. Is it 6-3?
Oh dear.
It's Harry Stallard. It's the commentator.
Oh, yeah.
See, Bears 1 changed their tactics up because I'm actually starting to handle, which at the moment I'd only be in the end zone, and I didn't like it.
What is going on with Bears 1? What is
Yeah.
Very stuck in their ways, Bears 1.
It's almost a lack of respect. Done. Getting some up to Stevie. And find that dump, finds droppers. Minter. Stevie. Bailout. Jovan intercepts. Goes long.
That was a very good read by Jovan, but that was the only option available. So he went early before it was even looked at by the thrower.
What the hell happened there?
I mean, I'm so confused. Do people want to go back and try to understand that, or
I
just
think
accept that it was something weird that Zach was calling, and just leave it?
Yeah, I think just leave it. I'm not sure we'll ever be able to decipher whatever happened.
Jovan trying to find space. Nice red. Big again.
See, that was a lot better movement in the end zone. You can see all the defenders got drawn over here. Then Jonah came the other way, pulling Ben away and freaking get an easy toe in at the front.
Yeah, Fred goes into the end zone, which
Yeah.
is what helps.
What's Bears 2 Spirit doing like?
Oh yeah, Carver broke his shoe.
Injury called by Adam. Carver.
Very dramatic game.
Yeah, I know. It's that intense. His shoe couldn't handle it.
Across to Willem. Carr. Over the top now for Willem.
Okay, we've got to look at that. So, firstly, is it a travel? Do you think? From Willem here.
Old rules, yeah. New rules, no.
Ooh. Yeah, and also,
Top now for Willem.
I mean, it worked, but that lefty wobbly, he definitely could have just thrown it off his backhand and made it a lot easier job for Jovan. Indoors, I would expect that to be dropped sometimes because it's wobbling. Hannah, do you want to explain the difference between old and new rules?
You now don't have to slow down as you're going, so I think you can take like one extra step as you're going. So instead it used to be that if people were doing like give and goes and quick movements, technically most of that was traveling, because you had to set a pivot and then throw the disc, whereas now you can kind of just do it in the flow of like running. So it can be that you get the disc, you take, I think it's 3 steps now. Yeah, I think it's 3 steps. Yeah, like Felix says, 3 steps now, and then you can give the disc over. But it used to be that you couldn't do that.
Yeah, because technically I can't slow-mo it on this, but when I did, he does get it out before his back foot lifts up. So yeah, new rules, it'd definitely not be a travel.
Jovan making nice yards. Jonah at the front of the end zone now.
See, Jonah coming out there
Jovan.
was really good because the defenders don't expect it. He gets it right on the end zone line. They've all followed him to that area, and then Jovan can again get the sneaky one in on the side.
Tweet come in. Tell Zach to bring out the trick shots. There we go. There's two.
Hannah, there's more questions in the chat. I'm not as good at rules as you, so do you want to take these?
So you can release the disc while slowing down before setting your pivot. You don't have to be slowing down anymore. You just have you have 3 steps to release the disc. And yeah, I think that's a bit. The change was to try and stop people from calling it to slow down the game. So a lot of like give and goes of movements like that, people will call it even if they're not 100% sure of what really happened. I mean, it is a travel with the old rules, but they'll call it just to kind of like slow the other team down to like stop them again, and they wanted to keep it like fast paced, which I think makes sense. And therefore they changed the rules.
Best two still have the point lead. Q. Gone over. Oh! Stevie. Stevie thinks he's bigger than he is. Good pull come floating in down to Frigg. Oh.
That's one you might want to watch on YouTube at half speed. It's a cool. Jonah was called out, but he was like certain he was in, so he just took it from in to keep play going. Controversial opinion. I think he was out.
Oh, Vincent makes a. Jonah.
And that's Carver's second injury call of the game. This time he is actually out for good. Sadly enough.
Carver off injured. This back end. Wellham. Frigg trying to get into that open space. Goes for Joe right at the front, over the top. Jonah scores. I think scores. Zach Bricks. Trying to sit up front. You trying to step up his cut. Looking for the dump now in Harry. Can't find it, goes to Q. Harry trying to get free. Zach with the ISO up the line. No. Oh, he's gone over the top. Look at the gal. Scores!
So, for those that were there, this was the controversial thing. If you couldn't hear, that was the hooter that just went, and so it would have been Bears 2-1, I think, because it was 2 points in it. And yeah, I'll go back. I can't slow it down, but Jovan called a foul as on the throw. So in Jovan's eyes, what happened was Zach hit his hands on the follow through of the throw, and if you hit someone after you've thrown it, you weren't meant to be able to throw it like that. But I mean, the tap, it was like
minor foul.
it was like a tap of the hands, and Jovan like he's gone back and watched it, and he's been like, "Oh gosh, that wasn't a foul, was it?" For like in the moment, you felt your hands get hit. I don't know. Maybe Zach's got really strong fingers, and it felt harder than it was. So could be a foul, but unfortunately we don't have instant replay in real life. And yeah, it was. I think it was contested.
Gone over the top, look at the gap.
But
Score!
either way, it comes back to the thrower. So yeah. Welcome George. What a sad moment. To be honest, in a very foul-y game, that was the most minor thing, and it got called.
You finished the point, I think, and then it says it's
Quite sad.
Oh. Ben,
Are you within 1 point? Oh, okay, we thought it was 7-5.
7-6.
Okay, so at the momentary lapse, Barca is now gone, but it's 7.
Oh, it's gone up again. Not as good as the first one. Oh.
That they now
Yeah, Zach tried to force it and do it again. They were up with the disc. If they just held it, keep disc win the game. One of his sayings, actually. So, unfortunate. Okay, I'm sorry. I have to defend myself here. In my eyes, so everyone knows the sideline reset. You go up line when you're faked. I just looked at him and he just went as I threw it. So that's why he had to dart back.
Well, it doesn't
Just
matter. It was
Doesn't matter. He caught it. He did well to get it again. He should. Yep. I just want that out in the public. But yeah.
Having to go all out to catch that. Across to Willem.
Frigg is very reliable
Frigg up the line.
for those
Willem
things.
can't get
Lots of calls coming from Frisbee today.
I think it's late in the game. People are upset. People are frustrated. Bit foulier. Bit more calls. Not ideal.
and there's an awful lot of people watching
And
this
look
game
at the
as well.
sideline.
Oh, dear.
One of my favourite things was Henry coming to Bears and explaining this game. It's like, yes, I was there. Was not fun. I think the region knows about this game.
The two munchkins on the sideline.
Can't get it. Goes to Jonah looking for that point. Bears 2 trying to get that flood on. Back to Willem. Willem crosses to Frigg. Frigg over the top, back to Willem.
Very interestingly,
Frigg,
Bears
working
2
out.
play 1-4 flood.
Willem posing
Bears
the end
1
zone
play a
defeat. He doesn't.
2-3 flood.
Jonah instead and scores. 7-all.
Yeah. Bears 1 were actually a lot calmer there on that offense.
A lot of Bears 2 players standing in my camera vision. Backhand, Dan. Thank you. Over to you, to Fiddler. Joppers. On with Fiddler. Looking for Stevie. Finds Stevie right at the end. Hugh.
Can't remember what happens
Laying
there.
down.
This is really
Yeah.
bad.
Hugh.
I was like, how did this bit end? I was like, oh no, I do remember.
Zach. Fiddler. Hugh.
For anybody interested, the
top, he's back at the-
changes.
Oh!
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is bad. The changes.
Sorry, Hannah, what were you saying?
The changes to the travel call is that now after catching the disc and landing inbounds, the thrower must reduce speed as quickly as possible without changing direction. And they establish a pivot point. So yes, you do have to try and reduce speed, but it's not as emphasised as with the other rules. But now, however, if a player catches a disc while running or jumping, the player may release. This is where it doesn't. You don't have to change. Sorry. However, if a player catches a disc while running or jumping, the player may release a pass without attempting to stop and without establish a pivot, provided that the player does not change direction or increase speed. And a maximum of 2 additional points of contact are made with the ground after the possession has been established. So you're now allowed to touch the floor, take 2 steps basically, and release it before you take your foot up. But it means that you don't have to slow down, which means that give and goes are more on. Sorry.
Yeah.
Back to the foul.
Back to the foul. The one thing I'd say about this game now is the mental games actually turned because Bears 2 were up. We had clawed our way back through some sketchy means, but they were up and they're thinking they just want to end the game. They just want to win. And like this option Hugh takes isn't like any of the other ways they've scored. It was way closer than normal, and unfortunately, Dan it was a very hard catch for Dan Galvin, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't show it in this camera angle, but I think there's a photo of you see Jonah run into the back of him and foul him for the turnover. So yeah,
Very rogue.
That could have been
very
good.
rogue.
That would have been, yeah.
Here, universe point.
Whereas Bears 1 now are just taking the dumps, taking every single free option, and not risking anything,
On
unlike earlier.
placed by Joppers. Sent it to Jovan. Looking for Carr. Oh, Stevie couldn't quite get there. Jonah. Stevie's got to get back quick. Frigg. Carr. Van. Carr. Go. Carr. Frigg, nice swing. Bears one score
Off screen.
and take the game.
That's the end of the game. Yeah, it's gone down in history. Many people were sad for it. Looking back at it, it definitely wasn't a foul on Jovan, so Bears do definitely deserve to win. So I'm just getting the next one up. Yeah, unfortunate. Does anyone have any overall thoughts about the game, and what do you think could be improved? And let's see if any of it is improved for the same matchup 2 years later. Otherwise, I'll say my ideas and start watching it.
Are you getting the thing up?
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
share my screen now. Four-person flood. Yes. Definitely on a smaller pitch as well, four-person becomes even more powerful as there's just no space. You can't get through it. Yeah. Less Thunder Clutch Bears on Bears 2. Yeah, maybe that was it. Maybe it was just the Thunder Bears just being that good.
I think personally, from looking at the first game, hopefully I would like to see going to second game. Not that I haven't watched it, but slightly better like mental attitude to games. Which I think in the past, quite a lot of the teams that I played on, maybe in first year, like the mental attitude of the whole team, as soon as they started losing, which is what we saw in Bears 1, it was a very negative and not a fun way to play.
Yeah.
And like you're still playing Frisbee and you're still in whatever that was, a semi-final or anything. And I think keeping your head up is the best way to, turn a game around.
Yeah. Like, I think a lot of Frisbee players forget it. Frisbee is a hobby. Like, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it? So just
big words right there.
enjoy the moments. I didn't come up with that. Someone on email once said that to me. Yeah, this game obviously it's on hardcourt, smaller pitches, but it's still quite a big pitch for hardcourt. But there's been quite a lot of tactics changed, as well as team change as well. Less Thunder Clutch Bears. But yeah, let's just begin. I mean, what a catch by Neil. You can see the nerves were there at the start.
Yeah, it's not a good start.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, absolutely done for.
What a shibby.
Can anybody say the main tactic change from the other teams to this one. You can keep playing it. Or are you gonna say something else?
I was gonna say something once they respond.
Oh, okay. You only get to hear Dan once you respond to my question, it seems.
Yeah, awkward.
Uh,
She's gonna say dead silent. Oh, Phoebe doesn't like the silence. She's gonna answer it. We're playing between handlers. Yeah. I mean, it's quite hard to see the cutters to see the tactics change, but yeah, it is ISO to vert. I was cheating. You were there. So yeah, it is vert stack now instead of ISO. It's hard to tell because you can't see upfield, but the way to tell is it's not the same three people on disc the whole time. Yes, Henry's been there a lot, but there's been other people coming in and out of screen. And yeah, the handler reset. This is what I want to notice on the game. How Bears one playing looks a lot faster because we're every 2 seconds we're looking for that handler reset if we haven't got an upfield option and just keeping the disc moving over and over again. Whereas with an ISO, you spend that first couple seconds looking for the ISO shot where everyone is static, and then you start looking at weaving, which is a lot of movement. And I think for Warwick in general, we started playing vert more because, well, firstly we've got a very good base of like team ability. So ISO is very good when you have one insane player who can sky everyone. So vert makes sense. And two, our like speed just makes it make sense to just keep resetting with lots of different players because we will always win those one-on-ones, getting back to dump and getting up the lines, essentially.
yeah, it's way more fun to play as well.
Yeah, everyone gets involved.
Yeah. That was sad.
Unfortunate turnover.
Lots of first point chases going on there.
Yeah. But
So he gets it back. Big D.
huge. That's taken out of context, isn't it? I'm kind of being selfish, and when I'm free as dump, I'm staying there because I'm like, well, why are you looking off a free option?
Oh, sad. Ooh. A little bit of moving the disc.
Yeah. It's an accidental kick forward by Ben. Harry doing a lovely curtsy to score that. Very beautiful. So in this case, Bears one's actually been broken first point, and the 2 years before it was just a hold. So surely mentally we're going to be in a much worse state because it's going even worse than 2 years ago. But let's see whether the team does crumble. As you can see, I mean, in that 30 seconds, they didn't. But what I wanted to touch upon was we were just on the end zone line, and we've gone back to our own end zone, which is something I don't think either team did on the other pitch, on the other game. That might be because it's a bigger pitch, and so going back to halfway was all that's needed. But it's just also one of those things where if you can't score immediately, going backwards and getting them to come out of the end zone with you, it's good because then their defensive positioning that was making it so hard for you to score isn't there anymore. So using the whole pitch is always worth it indoors, and you can see how quickly you can go upfield. So going back to your end zone line costs you what, 5 seconds, if that. So it's always worth it in my eyes. Dan did some very good fishing there for what wasn't a good throw. Yeah, some of these. So a big change we did was our end zone tactics. 3 years ago, it was you'd have two in the end zone, they'd split, and hopefully one of them would get a free end score. Whereas now, what Felix wrote in a very weird way is our tactics was always an end zone ISO, which was you might start with two in the end zone, but one would always leave to leave the 1-on-1 because it's just stupidly overpowered if you can just throw it to break side. It's just an immediate score. And so you can see both teams trying to force this option more so than should do, whether it's by throwing the throw slightly too slow, slightly too far, or it's just like with the wrong type of throw, which is the downside to it. People get a bit too excited about the option of scoring and just force it. But yeah, you'll see it throughout the game. Rather than there being two in the end zone, there'll be one, and these overheads will be thrown. Rip. So, can anyone tell me what throw? I know that worked, but what throw that should have been? Because that actually came across from open side to break side over Neil's head. So if Neil had managed to turn around and see it, probably would have D'd it. Or you can just roast Neil in the comments. I think that's my answer. It's a lot harder, but if you can throw an IO scuba there, if you want to go for an overhead, or if you can throw a round flick, it will curve into the offensive player without going over the defensive player. If you understand that, so they can catch it a lot easier. Yeah, but a hammer is perfectly fine if the person is face marking like Neil was. Ooh, that was quite a long look upfield.
Yeah, you should have dumped it way earlier.
Luckily, see, if the dump mark was tight, that could have been a turnover. But maybe Henry knew that they weren't tight, so could look up a little bit. So we've put on a zone now to slow the game down. I think we were feeling that we weren't doing good enough man defense. It wasn't tight enough. So if we can just slow them down, force an error, or force a bad throw, it's best for us. And the zone changed. It went from FSU to house. And it's basically a difference of forcing out to forcing middle. One way you're forcing into another defender, and so they're there to help you out. Whereas one way you're forcing out the pitch and kind of just hoping that they go for the big shot, which is FSU was we got rid of it because it didn't slow other team down as much as it just forced them to throw big shots. And so if our deep big shots are still riskier, the point of a zone indoors isn't to get Ds, it's to just slow down. I don't know how many times I said that in that sentence, but yeah. That's sad that was bricked. They did such a good job. Henry and Carver did such a good job of chasing it down.
Yeah, the main difference with FSU is in this position here, Adam, instead of just floating around getting in the way, he would try and be marking Sean, who's the person who's the other dump, which means that you have a tight mark on the dump, and Henry would then be forcing towards the dump, tight mark on the dump, and then downfield you would have to try and cover kind of more of the space, and the break option is more on. Whereas what is changed to is something which makes it harder for the person to throw forwards because Adam's in the way, but easier to dump. So yeah, as Dan was saying, it's a lot easier to just kind of keep the disc going, but there's a lot more passes you have to do to get through the zone compared to FSU, which was trying to. It makes it easier to throw the big shots because of that.
I'm just going to go back. Bears 2 did a really good job here of actually finding the floor in house. So the mids have quite a lot to cope with. So if you attack the wing, as you can see, Nathan's just off screen on the left, but Akash is running across to where the disc is flying. That is actually the break side. The floor in the house. Yeah, the floor in the house. So if you can get that breakthrough out before the force is on you, you can normally get quite a big gain upfield. But the good thing is it's not normally into the end zone, whereas with FSU, the big shots, because they're not breakthroughs, you can normally just throw them quickly all the way into the end zone. Oh,
It's so sad.
that's so sad. They just stare at each other. I think it was too far for Carver, and it was curving the wrong way for Sid. So I think it was a turn anyway, but big sad. They both definitely just looked at each other like, go on then.
Yeah, it looked like Carver slowed down because he thought Sid was going to
Yeah.
go for it. I would say there's a lot more throwaways in this game.
Yeah, there definitely are.
The level of Frisbee maybe isn't as good. Who knows?
Or do you think that's the difference between smaller hardcourt Higgs?
Yeah, I do.
Like there are
think that as
definitely
well.
way more free options in the first game.
Yeah, and there's more
Oh,
space.
Sid said he could have got it. I thought it was a perfect throw. Thank you. See, this is actually quite a good example of why we did a 1-4. We only care about what's going on in the end zone or what's the threat to score. Therefore, we can get them all in. And sometimes you even leave the personal disc just alone out there if there are too many threats in the end zone. Unfortunately, yeah, this is an unintentional travel. The red line is actually the sideline.
Oh
My apologies.
God, Dan.
Outrageous. And there's our one in, strong suit. Maybe would have been better if Neil was in the middle, so I had like time to float it, but he was free on the other side, so I can just knife it at him.
Oh, very rogue. That's a classic Nathan move there.
I can't believe Dan Brown caught that. Just hit his chest. It's like, oh, there, nice.
Dan Brown's pro at catching things.
Yeah,
Well, just in general, but catching stuff that you don't think anybody's going to catch.
yeah. So they've gone to a flood. Well, they might have called wall, but yeah, a flood. So the one in is no longer effective. You can't throw an ISO throw when there's 4 defenders there. So as you can see, we start having more in. We have the 2 or 3 handers out and start just moving around the back.
There's definitely a lot more moving in and out of the end zone than before.
Yeah.
High
So
backhand going on there.
yeah. What Carver and Henry are doing is we're up, they're wasting time, but more than that, they're just slowly going back and making the defense have to do something. They have to come out, they have to put pressure on these two. You can't just leave Paddy to do it all. It would be very unfair. It's very effective, but the important thing is as soon as you start seeing the defense starting to come out and put pressure on, you change it up. If you keep playing this slow, you will get D'd. Which they do a very good job of changing it up, and well, we'll see what happens. Well, yeah, there was 2 throws in the end. Start throwing it forward as they started coming out, and there was a hole in the flood.
Scuba. I'm not sure who the scuba was for though.
Yeah,
Ooh, interesting.
this game wasn't as tight, so I think it kind of the quality got a little bit less intense. Good.
That was good defense from Neil.
It was.
He didn't poach, stayed close to his man and made it really hard.
Yeah. Should tell Willem that then. Boom, roasted. And that is the other. That was a really good shot by Dan Brown. It's just see Dave will come towards him because that's where the threats are, and just put a nice like slow one over the top, so it can lead me into the end zone. Oh, this is the point where we put Dan Jones not as a force in a zone, and he had no clue what to do. It's quite entertaining.
Don't be mean to Dan. He looks to be doing a great job.
Yeah, I mean he's doing a good job. Don't get me wrong, but I'm pretty sure he said to me afterwards, "I only like to force."
There was about 3 things there, but he did look very confused. So I think one of the big differences between both of these teams is that the ones consistently throw their pulls right to the back of the twos' end zone. You see right at the start of each point, the twos are like on their back end zone line pretty much, which you wouldn't think was that big a difference, but definitely they take. I mean, it's lots of pressure, but also twos take quite a lot of time to move forwards. Just like the ones have only just moved it forwards from where they caught it. So I think probably put the ones at an advantage for something which is actually really small, and it's just down to whoever's doing the pull being slightly better at throwing
Yeah.
it. Ooh, we've suddenly gone very blue.
Is it?
It was kind of yellowy and now it's gone really blue. I don't know if that's just me.
Okay.
What is that backhand, Dan? It's atrocious.
channeling my inner Sid.
Yep. It's just been really chill,
See.
moving around the
So
back.
you can see Henry doing a really good job of taking it upon himself to change the pace up. He gets the dump, and as soon as he throws it, he starts going rather than like waiting a little bit. Because then the whole team sees it happen because they've obviously been looking at him because he's been on disc, and those change as well. Ooh. Oh. My thing's just black screen. But do we think that was a good poach by Sid?
I can't see
Sorry.
anything.
Yeah, my thing's just crashed. Let me just relaunch it. It should be fine in a second. Sorry about this.
Sid votes is not a good poach.
Yeah. Where was it?
It's not loading.
I can't remember where we were. I don't think it really matters. Defo laziness. Oh yeah, we're just before it.
I can't see anything, so
Wait, you can't see anything at all?
no, the stream's not loading for me.
Is that the same for everyone else?
Yep.
Same for me. Oh.
Rip.
Let me try just doing this instead. Is it just not loading at all, or is it say there is no stream active?
It's not loading for me now. We had like 2 minutes ago. We could maybe end it there.
Yeah, I was just ended there. Cool. Yeah, this game wasn't as exciting of a finish, unfortunately. It was just, yeah, it wasn't close. The final things I wanted to say was that indoors, like watching these two games, you can see Bears 2 dictating play, dictating the pace. Like on offense, they would go fast until they got into the end zone where they'd slow down and take the 100% option. And on defense, they would put pressure on Bears 1, making us have to throw quickly and have to play. Whereas in the second game, it's the reverse, and that's why teams do well. It's not just a like, oh, they're physically better at throwing and catching. It's a mental attitude of we're gonna dictate play, we're gonna do this, and also the mental attitude of when things go wrong, still just playing to the best of your ability and enjoying it. Like enjoying playing is just more important than anything else most of the time. Like when you play Frisbee, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Well, thanks for doing this session, Dan. Giving us an insight into your brain of indoors. What is happening this weekend? This Saturday we are not having a stream just because it is Pubs and Comms Golf on Saturday, which is starting sometime in the evening, so we're not going to have one. And then Sunday, we're going to do a yoga session for anybody who's really drunk, hungover after Pubs and Comms Golf. So hope to see lots of people there. And then we have lots of exciting announcements coming up for streams in the future. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for all of that. But thank you so much for coming, and hope you have a great evening.
Next time Hannah says special guest, they are more special. It's actually an actual guest.
I don't know. You're pretty special.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.